Hello everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my BookTube channel. This video is going to be the Bookternet All-Stars Charity Challenge, which is a community BookTube tag that was created by Rachael Marie in order to raise funds for COVID-19 relief. So if you would like to learn more about that or participate in the tag yourself, I will have all of the information on how to do that linked down below in the description box, so go ahead and give that a read. But the idea behind this tag is that Rachael has created a challenge board of various books and authors that are popular on BookTube, and you are supposed to go through the board, talk about which of those authors or books you have or haven't read and what you thought of the books that you read, and if you didn't read them, why haven't you? So let's go ahead and do the thing. The first author on this tag board I immediately recognize is Angie Thomas. So Angie Thomas wrote, of course, The Hate U Give and On the Come Up, both of which I have read. The Hate U Give is actually a book that I bought because of BookTube, and I bought it on my first trip to Seattle, which was like over 3 years ago, I think at this point. I went to a Barnes & Noble and I was like, I ran out of books that I brought with me on this trip, so I had to go buy The Hate U Give. I thought that this book was amazing. On the Come Up is good too. I didn't like it quite as much as I liked The Hate U Give, but they were both really good, and I am just here for Angie Thomas on panels and doing all sorts of writing. I will read all of the stuff that she writes. Next up is the Shatter Me series. I think it was a trilogy that got turned into more by ttrpg. Haven't read any of these. I only really know about them because I know that Sam from Thoughts on Tomes likes them, but I just never really had any interest in picking them up. Okay, next on the list is Leigh Bardugo. Just in case you couldn't see here, I have all of her books right there on my shelf, and I have the Grisha trilogy as well. But yeah, I freaking love everything that she writes. Six of Crows duology is like one of my favorite books of all time, definitely my favorite YA classically. Let's fix the camera so it's not horrible there. And yeah, Leigh Bardugo is an auto-buy author for me. I love her books. The Six of Crows duology, like I said, is the best, but I have all of the others, and I reread them probably once every year, maybe every couple of years, something like that. Okay, next up is The Cruel Prince, which is the first in a trilogy by Holly Black. Yes, I do have it. Yes, I have read it. This is actually the Owl Crate cover, so if it looks a little bit different, that's why. These books aren't like the most amazing works of literature ever, but I really enjoy them and they're super fun to read. They actually have fae that are violent, scary, and dark, which is the kind of fae that I grew up with from like my family's stories and like Irish folklore and all of this stuff. So having fae that are bloodthirsty and cruel really resonated with me in that sense. The romance is mostly just an angst factory, but that's okay, because that's really all I was hoping to get out of it. I was not hoping to get an amazing, mature, adult relationship from these two horny teenagers, one of whom is an entitled prince, and one of whom thinks that she knows everything. But I like the book series. I know this one has been somewhat controversial of late on BookTube, but I like it still. Next is The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. Okay, I have not read this yet, but I have been meaning to, and it's been one of those books that has been a casualty of me checking it out from the library, and then it has to go back before I can finish reading it. I am gonna read it. I'm gonna get around to it one of these days. Okay, next up on the list is an author, actually. It's Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab. See, I have kind of conflicting feelings about Victoria Schwab. So I started reading A Darker Shade of Magic when that book first came out, and I really liked the first book. This was like early college for me. I don't remember exactly how long ago that was, but it was a while ago that I read that book. But then I felt like the series kind of went downhill from there. I definitely got the sense that Lila was very much a I'm not like other girls kind of girl, and that really annoys me. And then I just kind of lost track of all of the intricacies of what was happening with the series. By the time the last book came out, I realized I was gonna have to reread the entire series from start to finish to like really enjoy and appreciate it, and I just didn't feel like making that commitment, so that wasn't really my thing. I think I started to read our Dark Duet books. It's like Dark Duet, Savage Song, something like that. Couldn't get into them. I know that she's written some middle grade books. I would be curious to try those out, but they're not super high on my priority list. Okay, next up is Cinder, which is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Mayer. I read these books also while I was in college. Really, really enjoyed them. Obviously, my relationship with these books has changed as my own understanding of race and privilege has changed. I definitely enjoyed them just without any caveats, and now that I have learned more about this and reckoned with my own privilege as a white person, I recognize that there are problematic aspects to this book series because there is a lot of like using Orientalism and kind of appropriating aspects of Asian culture and just using it as window dressing without any substance to it in these books. I recognize that that is a problem. That is not unique to this series. However, there is a lot of that in this series. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt, as you will. But I did read all of them. I read all of the short stories. Next up is Adam Silvera. I don't think I've read anything by Adam Silvera. And the reason why is that all of his books are marketed as being very sad. And sad books about queer people are something that I have like a very limited capacity to deal with in a meaningful way, because so many stories in real life about queer people end up being sad. And when I read books about queer people, especially fiction, I try to go for books that are filled with queer joy, just because that's something that I seek out, and it's something that I didn't see represented when I was growing up. So I'm kind of making up for lost time with my queer YA being very joyful. Cassandra Clare is the next person. Oh, Cassandra Clare. She is such a BookTube favorite, and I cannot stand her books. I think she's fine as a human being. Like, I really enjoyed the moment where her new, like, Chain of Gold or something like that came out, and she basically told TERFs to go fuck off on Twitter, and I'm just like, yes, you go, girl. We appreciate this. We see. We acknowledge. Thank you. But I just don't really like her books at all. They're kind of trashy in my opinion. But I will say that I have read all of the City of Bones, and I think I read the first book of Infernal Devices, the Clockwork one. That's probably the one that I would recommend if you were going to read Cassandra Clare, because I really liked them. City of Bones was just kind of all over the place though, and it was like, I don't know, it was so cobbled together from a bunch of disparate ideas that I don't think was written very well at all. And yet, I read all of them, and I watched the Shadowhunters series on the CW, which I do love, even though I know it is like just teen urban fantasy drama. I don't care. It was super fun to watch. I friggin' loved it. So, I don't seek out new Cassandra Clare, but I wear my reading Cassandra Clare badge with pride because I don't believe in guilty pleasures. Okay, next up was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This author, I think, has kind of turned into a one-hit wonder for me because I know that she's written other stuff. I really liked this book. I love queer historical fiction, and I especially appreciated that this had a bisexual lady as the main character. But again, I know that this is kind of a divisive BookTube book. I know a lot of people thought it was nothing special. A lot of people equally loved it. I thought it was great. I enjoyed it a lot. Didn't really care for too many of her other books, though. Next up is someone with pink hair, but I don't know who they are. Let me see who that is. The internet tells me that this is Laini Taylor. I have not read anything by her. I know I probably should, just haven't gotten around to it. Next up is the Illuminae series by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I have read the first book in that series. It was a very quick read, despite the fact that it is over 500 pages, because most of it is documents with large parts redacted or more visual media. It isn't 500 pages of solid text. I thought it was fine. It was fun to read. It was entertaining at the time, but it wasn't something, again, that was like the great classic of our modern times. Next up is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I think I talked about this in a Geekly wrap-up this year, but I read the first two books and I enjoyed them. I started reading Thunderhead this year, which is the final book in the trilogy, and I realized that I just couldn't be bothered to finish it. I don't know why. Usually I get so curious to find out what happens to characters at the end of books, and this time I was just like, nah, I'm kind of okay with just ending the book with ending the series with Thunderhead and not reading, what is it? The Toll. The Toll, I think, is the last one. I think I may have mixed up those titles there. Anyways, so yeah, I really liked the first two. They were some of the first books that I read when I started this BookTube channel, so they'll have a place in my heart because I talked about them at the very beginning, but yeah. Who's this next person? I don't know who is this? Oh shit. According to the internet, this is Sarah J Maas. I can't stand Sarah J Maas's books. They are just not for me. I will say I have no intention of reading any of them. I think the only one that I have actually finished was A Court of Thorns and Roses, and that's because it came really highly recommended. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. Couldn't bring myself to finish any of her other books that I started, which is sad because I know that she's super popular. She's just not for me. I will say though, I love Cindy's videos about reading the various A Court of Thing and Other Thing videos because those give me such life and they really just dramatize and make funny all of the problems that I have with those books and why I didn't enjoy them. So the less said about that, the better, I think. Next is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I have not read this. I remember working in a bookstore when it first came out and I really wanted to read it. I saw it and I just haven't gotten around to it. Next up is Seanan McGuire. Funny thing about Seanan McGuire, I have but have not finished multiple of her books. I really do enjoy the way that she writes. I think that I just need to be in the right mood to pick up her books. I started reading the Wayward Children series when it first came out. I didn't finish reading the first book though because I think it just wasn't the right time. I've read more of her short stuff than I have her long form stuff, but I think it's good and I'd like to keep reading. Next up is The Poppy War by R.F. Kwong. This is another book that I have kind of complicated feelings about because I did read it, but I didn't end up liking it as much as I thought I would. I think that it tried to do too much, and I think it was much too declarative in its style of writing. If I'm gonna read a really long, tome of epic fantasy, I would like the writing to be a little bit more literary or poetic, I guess, instead of just stating, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I think that it was Ren was the main character's name, really annoyed me because she just kept doing these things that made absolutely no sense, even though it wasn't necessarily established as part of her character that she was foolhardy and foolish. So, yeah, I was ultimately a little bit disappointed by The Poppy War. I remember when The Dragon Republic came out, I got a hold of a copy and then realized that I was just totally unenthusiastic about continuing on with the story, which was a shame because I did really like the world that R.F. Kwong created. I just didn't really care for the characters enough to want to spend more time with them. And the next one, the final book, I guess I should say, is To All the Boys I Have Loved Before by Jenny Han. So I read the book, I think, when it came out. It was a long time ago. I don't really remember it. I think the main thing I remember about this is that when I saw the movie with my younger siblings, I related way more to the dad in the teen romance novel than I did to the teens in the teen romance novel, and I think that might just be a function of age. But I was just like, yeah, this dad, he's pretty cool. He knows what's up. I want to be like him. I thought that the concept was really cute, but again, I don't think that this story was for me. I think that this story is great and important, especially as far as Asian representation goes, because we don't have enough women of color represented in romance, especially YA and stuff. And there are some authors out there that are doing really incredible work with that. Jenny Han is one of them, and I appreciate and admire that. I just think that this story is really not aimed at me, and so I relate more to the dad. So that is going to do it for the Bookternet All-Stars Charity Challenge. If you're watching this video and you would like to do the tag, please consider yourself tagged, especially if your name is Brogan, Kathy, Brody, Michelle, Jessie, Starlet Reader, or Actual Spinster. I would love to see y'all do this tag. You don't have to make a YouTube video for it if you don't want to. There is a challenge board up that as long as you fill out the board and post it to like your social media or something like that, you will be entered in the drawing to see where the money that we raise by doing this tag gets donated. So if you like to see, so if you like this video and you'd like to see more of what I do, go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. That way you get updated every time I post a new video. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!